all of you. Now, in last lecture, I will start to BSc fourth year, paper number 2nd, which paper name is Elementary Probability Theory. In this paper, we start with which word name is sample space and event. Now, in last lecture, we have seen what is the definition for event. We are seeing what is the definition for event. The event is any subset of the event is any subset of all possible distinct outcome of a sample space omega. We can already see this. What is the definition for event? Any subset of all possible distinct outcomes of a sample space omega, which is called as event. So, what is the first? We define the example of random experiment. Okay. Then next we have write the sample space of that experiment. Then define any possible subset, which is called as event. And next important thing is event is always denoted by capital letters, which have already seen. Now in this lecture, what we see? What are the types of this event? The types of event. Okay. Now the first type of event is simple event. First type of event, simple event, or this is also called as elementary event. Now, what is the definition for simple event? If your sample space consists of, or if your event consists of only one sample point from sample space omega, then it is called as simple event. Understand? जर तुमच्या इव्हेंटच्या सॅम्पल स्पेस मध्ये एकच पॉसिबल आउटकम येत असेल तर त्याला काय म्हणतात? सिंपल इव्हेंट. सो द डेफिनेशन ऑफ सिंपल इव्हेंट इज द इव्हेंट consists of single or only one sample point from sample space omega, then this event is called as simple event. Then this event is called as simple event. Okay. This is called as simple event or elementary event. Why this is called as elementary event? Because this event consists of only one sample point. What is the sample point? We see that sample point is an element of your sample space omega. If this sample event consists of only one sample point, then it is called as simple event or elementary event. See one example of this event. Write down the example. What is the example for simple event? Okay. First, define any random experiment. What is the step for defining the event? First, start with random experiment. Then define sample space. Then go to event. Now see one example. If I write this example as tossing of 2 points simultaneously. Okay. Now this is my random experiment. What is the random experiment? Tossing of 2 points simultaneously. So my sample space S, or it is also called as omega, becomes exactly XS, XT, T, Now define any event A. I define event A as getting two heads, Now see what are your sample space omega? It consists of 4 elements. Now I define event A such as getting two heads. What are the possibilities of getting A? Therefore, your A contains exactly one sample point, which is HH. This sample point is in the omega, right? So this consists of only one sample point. That means n of A is equal to 1. So my event A becomes a elementary event or simple event. Why this is called as simple event? Because this event consists of only one sample point. Okay. Now see one another example is, I write the next example for simple event. If my random experiment is inspecting two items which are classified as good or bad. Okay. What is my random experiment? Is an inspection of two items. On the basis of inspection, I have classified these two items either good or bad. Okay. So my sample space omega becomes right omega, which is if first item, consider my first item, if it is a good. Okay. Now next item is also good. So my first sample point becomes both the items are good. Now next would become G and B. What is the meaning of this G? My first item is good and my second item is bad. Right? Like this, third is B and G and last is DB. What it shows? It shows my first item is bad, also my second item is bad. So n of omega becomes 4. This is my sample space omega for this random experiment. Now define the word event A as getting both items good. Okay, my event becomes getting both items good. So what are the possible values of this A? Which are A is equal to both the items are good. So exactly one possible value for this event A. So the n of A becomes 1 and therefore if n of A is equal to 1, then A is called as simple event or elementary event. Okay. Now first type of event is your simple event. Why is it simple event? Because it consists of only one sample point. Okay. This is our first type of event. Now see the second type of event. This is your first type of event. Now see second type of event. My second type of event is compound event. What is the compound event? If event consists of more than one possible sample point. Consists of more than one possible sample point. If your event consists of more than one possible sample point in sample space omega or point from sample space omega, then this event is called compound event. Why this is called as compound event? The event consists of more than one sample point. If it consists of only one sample point, then it is called as simple event or elementary event. Now, what is the compound event? If event consists of more than one sample point from sample space omega, then this event is called compound event. Now, see one example for this. Firstly, when we define how to define compound event, first start with random experiment, then write down its sample space omega, then go to define the event and classify this as whether it is compound event or not. See one example for compound event. My example is rolling of die experiment. Okay, my random experiment is rolling of die. So, what are the sample space for this experiment? Sample space omega becomes exactly how many points? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so my n of omega becomes 6. This is your random experiment. Now, I define event B as, I define event B as getting odd numbers. Now see how many odd numbers present in this omega. First see the how many odd numbers? Odd numbers are 3. How many? 3 odd numbers, which are 1, 3 and 5. So the n of B becomes 3. That means this consists of more than one sample point. So B is called as your compound event, right? B is equal to how many points? 1, 3, 5. So n of B is equal to 3. Okay. So my event B becomes compound event. Why this is compound event? This consists of 3 sample points. Therefore, my event B is a compound event. Okay. This is your second type of event. Now see examples of classification. Okay. What would you see from first lecture? See the example for classification of events for starting with sample space. Now, my random experiment is 3 points. 3 points are tossed simultaneously. Classify this experiment. Classify these experiments sample space of these experiments and define compound event based on these experiments. Okay. Now, what is my example? 3 points are tossed simultaneously. First, you have to classify this experiment as, how to classify experiment? Your first type of experiment is deterministic experiment and second will be non-deterministic experiment. We have to classify this experiment, then find its sample space. What is the sample space of this experiment? Okay. Then sample space and then define compound event. What is the compound event? If your event consists of more than one sample point, then we define any event which is classified as compound event. Okay. Now see how to find these values. First, what is the experiment? Your experiment is 3 points are tossed simultaneously. Okay. So my experiment is, what is my experiment? 3 points right? How to write this omega? These are the combinations of 3 coins and each coin shows either head or tail. So my this omega becomes, these are the 8 values which are conceived in your sample space omega. So n of omega is equal to 8. Okay, this is my first. Then what we find? Classify this experiment. How to classify this experiment? Whether these outcomes are sure or uncertain. So when we toss a coin, the possible outcomes are either head or tail. That means it is not a sure or not a certain event. Therefore, this experiment is your a random experiment. Okay, so my experiment is a non-deterministic experiment. It is also called as random experiment. Why this is called as random experiment? Because the each coin shows either head or tail. Okay. What is the exactly outcome of tossing of coins is not known before the performing an experiment. Therefore, this example is an example of random experiment. Then what we find? Sample space of this experiment. We already find this omega. Now, next we will define compound event based on this experiment. Now see, if my omega contains 8 elements, right, then we have to define an event which consists of more than one possible outcome. So, I define a event A such that getting event A getting at least one hit. This is my event A. Then what is the possible values of this event A? This is A is equal to, let's see, at least one hit. That means there is more than one hit is possibility of this event. एकापेक्षा जास्त असला तरी हे एकापेक्षा जास्त येत असेल तरी ते काय होते? Acceptable होते. So what are the values of A? This consists of 3 heads. So therefore A is consists of exactly, first item will be 3 times H. Then 2 times H is also possible. Okay. Then HCH, CHH. These all sample coins consist of at least one head. म्हणजे कमीत कमी एक हेड सगळ्यांमध्ये include असला पाहिजे. So next event is this is the values of event A. So how many these values? These are exactly 7 values. So n of A is equal to 7. So whether A consists of more than one element, as this A consists of 7 elements, that means your event A is a compound event. That means your event A is compound event. Okay. How to classify this event is most important on the basis of how many elements present in your event. If your event consists of only one sample point, then we classify it as simple event or elementary event. And if your event consists of more than one sample point, then it is classified as compound event. Okay. Now, what we see in this lecture? First, we will see what is the event, definition of event, then types of event. First type of event is simple event, which is also called as elementary event, and second type of event is compound event. Okay, and definition and also examples of these two events. In next lecture, what we see? Next lecture we have to see next type of event, which are, what are the types of events? Okay, next type of events are, third event is impossible event. Okay, sure event. another types of events which are seen in the next lecture. Thank you all of you.